Hello, good morning. You're watching News 9. I'm Shweta Kothari. We're bringing you stories from the world of business, policy and economy. With me in the studio, Kartik Malhotra. Good morning, Kartik.
Good morning, Shweta.
A whole host of flurry of news items coming in.
Especially a day after the Shara being market holiday. Here we are inundated with a lot of news items to discuss.
Absolutely. Let's then quickly begin with the top story that we're tracking, and that is coming by the way of who is going to buy Disney HOTSTAR. It appears that Reliance is making a bid, and not just a bid, it could just be finalizing the bid very, very soon.
As early as next month, if the report from Bloomberg is to be believed, but just see the kind of twists and turns that have come into this whole Disney Plus saga in India. And at a time when there were news items that even the Adani Group, which now owns a media entity called NDTV, could be bidding for it. You had reports of Sun TV looking to bid for Disney Plus HOTSTAR. And we are just talking about the India business of Star and Disney Plus and the streaming platform, which is Disney Plus HOTSTAR. Here we have it. I mean, Mukesh Ambani owned Reliance Industries, a no-brainer if you ask me. And I think we've gone on record to say this a number of times, and we'll repeat that today, that if there is one business entity and if there is one group that will actually be able to leverage from this deal and will really be able to make a difference in this overall entertainment and sports streaming domain that we live in today and we are so accustomed to.
It is Reliance Jio.
Nobody but Reliance Industries. And and Reliance Jio as well. So, there is Voot, there is Voot 18, there is Viacom Sports 18, and there is this entire streaming behemoth called Jio Cinema. And it has been slowly chipping away, chomping away at the business of Disney Plus. It started with cricket rights, IPL rights snatched away literally. This was the calling card that Disney Plus really had up its sleeve, and this was something that gave it the fillip and made it the largest subscription-driven streaming platform in India. And there you had Reliance taking away the IPL rights to begin with. Soon after that, the second casualty was the content of HBO. So you had series like Game of Thrones and Succession being taken away from the Disney Plus platform, streaming now on Jio Cinema. And even though Reliance Industries has been able to, through Sports 18, back the rights of IPL, the rights for ICC tournaments, including the World Cup, still happen to be with Disney Plus. Now, Disney Plus, of course, was bought
in the market,
has been in the market
and
has been losing subscribers ever since. And I call it the three phases of subscription or revenue that it has seen. It started as a free HOTSTAR only before the Disney acquisition, when Bob Iger and Disney had purchased the brand Disney from Rupert Murdoch's Fox, 21st Century Fox. So at that time, HOTSTAR was an ad-driven platform. Soon after it became Disney Plus HOTSTAR, it pivoted to a subscription-driven platform. And right now it finds itself at the cusp of part subscription, part advertising. So the Cricket World Cup, which is on right now, streaming on Disney Plus HOTSTAR, is actually out there for free and it is ad supported. And it has, because of the losing of IPL rights and the losing of HBO content, it actually all of last year saw its subscriber base dwindle from about 70 lakh or to about 50 lakh. So that's a huge loss that it has seen on the base of its subscribers.
Right.
Now, I think the big elephant in the room is the valuation. Now, when Rupert Murdoch had sold the business unit, the India unit, to Walt Disney, I think there was a very clear expectation and estimation that about 17 to 18 billion dollars was the value of Star's India operations. Today, Reliance
so that begs the question,
how much should Reliance pay and how big is the deal likely to be? Reliance, in its own internal reports, is valuing the Star business to about 7 to 8 billion dollars. And from the reports, it seems that it may pay up to $10 billion for the deal. Now, $10 billion, if you ask me, is dirt cheap if you get access to the entire regional entertainment content. Sports is something that Reliance itself is heavily invested in. But regional entertainment is something which for Reliance has been a bit of a slow start. So even though it has Colors, which is a Hindi language national entertainment platform, it gets access to Star's whole bouquet of regional entertainment content. And in addition to that, Disney Plus HOTSTAR continues to hold ICC cricket rights and Pro Kabaddi League, EPL, couple of other big sporting events up until 2027. So if it gets this deal at $10 billion, it gets access till 2027 to all the sporting rights that Disney Plus HOTSTAR already has and the entire bouquet of regional entertainment.
So the synergy in a way makes sense.
Absolutely.
Not just for Disney HOTSTAR, but more importantly for Reliance that has been upping its game when it comes to OTT entertainment, making a latest bid for Disney HOTSTAR. But moving on to a story that we're tracking coming in by the way of how good perhaps are the street vendors doing on the back of PM SVANidhi scheme. We now know, and an SBI research has found out, that the entrepreneurs or the street vendors that it's targeting are not just OBCs but are more so in the general category as well, pointing at a holistic sort of entrepreneurship that PM SVANidhi has been able to push for.
So, Shweta, I think, let's just jog our memories back about 3 years or so, 3 years and a quarter. June 1st, 2020, right in the middle of the start of the pandemic, Prime Minister Narendra Modi then had announced PM SVANidhi as a scheme to empower collateral-free loans to street vendors. Now, within these 3 years, about 53 lakh street vendors have taken about 70 lakh disbursements of loan amounting to about 9,100 crore rupees. Now, this mix is really interesting. So, at one level, it's the no surprise there, street vendors not belonging to the general category, most of them in the non-general category, about as high as 35% belonging to the non-general category, and a good 44% or so within this are the OBC. Now, this particular statement coming in from the research of SBI at a time when caste-based surveys in any case are the most talked about political issue as a run-up to general elections becomes one more sort of, goal, for in favor of the Prime Minister-led government right now in India, that a lot of OBCs, as many as 44% or so, have benefited from the scheme. But I think if we were to leave the politics aside, these loans have been disbursed in 3 tranches. So the first loan is 10,000 rupees. Upon repayment of that 10,000 rupees, you could opt for a 20,000 rupee loan. Upon repayment of that 20,000 rupee loan, you could opt for a 50,000 rupee loan. So 50,000 being the maximum collateral-free loan disbursed to street vendors. Now, the repayment ratio is actually fairly interesting.
Which is important to point out, because one of the problems for street vendors to get a bank loan is, will they be able to pay back, their ability to repay that loan. And the figures that have come to light through SBI research have come out with some very interesting sort of takeaways.
Absolutely. So a good chunk, almost 60% odd of first time 10,000 rupee loan seekers have been able to repay that loan, take a 20,000 rupee loan. About 35% of the people who've taken the 20,000 rupee loan have been able to repay that and opt for a 50,000 rupee loan. So overall, I think 3 stories coming out. One, of course, is completely in sync in election season with the benefits accruing to non-general caste category, especially OBCs. The second message is women empowerment. 43% of the loans have actually been disbursed to women. And these women have now been formally included in this whole financial inclusion banking system. And I think the third and the most critical story that emerges from here is how many of these street vendors have actually taken on to digital payments and use of digital technologies in their financial inclusion. So the use of debit cards, which are linked to the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, has gone up by as much as 50%. So overall, you see that there is one fillip to street vendors in general in their sort of upliftment. Within that, there is this caste-based OBC and non-general category. Then there is women, and then there is digital
equitable distribution.
So equitable distribution, financial inclusion, digitization, all 3 reflecting well in a run-up to election season for PM SVAnidhi Yojana.
Absolutely, augurs very well for the sitting ruling government as far as PM SVAnidhi Yojana is concerned. But shifting focus to a story that we're tracking by the way of one of the largest edtech companies in India, BYJU'S, and the saga continues after a lot of changes, restructuring. It appears that while the audit reports for financial year 2022 are still not out, the CFO, who was appointed just about 7 months ago, has now quit.
Absolutely. So, Ajay Goel, the CFO appointed to pretty much get the books of BYJU'S in order, has at least stated that before he joins back Vedanta, where he came from, and I think that's relevant because Vedanta is also undergoing this huge demerger and is looking at a trusted CFO to come and do this division of shares and do this division of books of accounts for these multiple businesses within Vedanta, which are going to be demerged. But the CFO at BYJU'S saying very clearly that before he quits, and 30th October seems to be his last working day, which is just around the corner. I mean, we are technically 4 days away.
4 days
he is going to complete the financial sort of, presentation of reports of BYJU'S for FY22 before he quits. So I think the news item emerging is that within the next 4 days, we should have a BDO attested, because Deloitte had quit earlier this year, a BDO attested, CFO attested financial statement of BYJU'S emerging, hopefully by the end of this month, 30th of October. And hopefully that should partly put some rest to really understanding what really went on into the company and why the company had been hiding these reports and had not really got them audited and presented up until now. Remember, we are already about 25 days behind the very, very extended long rope deadline of 30th September by when BYJU'S was to present audited reports of FY22. But even if it comes by end of this month, which the CFO, outgoing CFO says they would, then at least we have some room to understand what FY23 would perhaps look like for BYJU'S, and then its whole sort of, can of worms or can of tuna, as you want to call it, depending on how good or how bad the books are. Those should emerge to sort of pop out of the can, and we should get some sort of a direction on where the company is headed.
But the CFO quitting at this point in time, interesting timings, right ahead before the company's own deadline of releasing its own books, which is the end of the month. We don't know whether that's going to happen on time or not.
He's gone on record in his statement. He has said that before 30th of October, when he actually...
Timing is a suspect?
I mean, had he just quit, it would have seemed suspect. But then he's going back to the company he came from at a time when that company is demerging its businesses. So it seems that perhaps, calling this timing suspect would be jumping the gun at this stage. But I think let's wait for the books to come out. Let's wait for the financial reports to come out and really see what is in those really closely guarded books of BYJU'S.
Within a week's time, perhaps next week this time around, we'll have the financial books of BYJU'S open for public record and public viewing if the deadline that has been set by the EdTech major is adhered to. But moving on to a story that is coming by the way of India's growing prowess, growth story and its trajectory. India is likely to be the fifth or the third largest economy rather by turn of the decade, which is 2030. This according to S&P Global.
Absolutely. But the news is that there is no new news on this, right? So great. I mean, you have one more global player sort of, being bullish on India, putting its stamp of attestation that, hey, we are in sync with the India growth story and we are pinning our hopes on India to be the third largest economy by turn of the decade. No surprise there. But I think in the same breath, what is also emerging is the fact that India is also going to be the second largest Asian economy. But again, no surprise there because China leads India by miles when it comes to overall size of the economy, the GDP. So if we can have those numbers, I think as of 2022, the US economy stood at a solid $25.5 trillion. The next in that league is China. China at about $18 trillion worth of the size of the economy. A distant third happens to be Japan at 4.2 trillion, followed by Germany at 4 trillion, and India at 3.5. So, I think the battle between these, the rank 3, 4 and 5 is fairly tight, and given India's growth rate at a time when Japan is facing the challenge of demographics sort of, not in favor of the economy and an aging population, and at a time when Germany, already the first European country to formally go into recession, is unlikely to come out of that deflation anytime soon, and likely to not really grow at the numbers that Europe had grown 2 decades, 3 decades earlier. I think India hopping on to the third spot is no big deal.
It's the obvious.
My only worry is it's fairly obvious, and S&P is also saying that 7.3 to 7.6% growth rate is what is going to see India through. by 2030. Now, India will become a $5 trillion economy, the big number that everybody talks about, that 5 trillion. Honestly, no big deal about 5 trillion. When you look at 5 trillion in the context of China already at 18 trillion and US at 25.5 trillion, I think even 5 trillion or by 2030 reaching up to 7.5 trillion, which is double the size of the economy that we are at right now, still keeps the gap between US, China and India fairly high. So I think while it's great to be bullish on India, I think what we need to really understand and realize is that even a 7.3, 7.6% growth rate is not going to be enough. You may be the third largest. It's a great feat that you're the top 3 most powerful, biggest economies. But the distance between US, China and India is still going to be large. And let's not discount the fact that US will also continue to grow in this period. So even at 3%, less than half of what India is growing at, US will continue to grow. China's own estimate suggests that China will also grow at about 5%. So India growing at, RBI suggested 6.5%, S&P suggesting 6.2, 6.3% right now, but medium to long term 7.3, 7.6% is still not going to take us anywhere close to US and China.
Absolutely. So the gap between the second largest, third largest will continue to widen, albeit another major global ratings agency bullish on India, projecting India to be the third largest economy by 2030. But before we close this bulletin, I think an important story emerging from Bengaluru at this point, where IKEA has been fined to the tune of approximately 3,000 rupees and above.
That's it.
I mean, that's very little, but I think the charges here are important and interesting to point out, because a lot of us as shoppers, when we go out to buy stuff, we are made to pay for the bag that we carry out of a retail shop, whether it has a logo or not has a logo. I haven't really noticed, but I end up paying about 20 rupees. A woman in Bengaluru ended up paying 20 rupees. Then she went to the court, calling it unfair, and the consumer court has ruled in her favor.
So consumer courts in in the recent past, ever since 2018, when the subject really got the first induction into the consumer courts, and the ruling has always been in favor of the consumers and has always been against the retailers. Now, what have these consumer court rulings really said? I think let's just spend 30 seconds to understand that. I think by law, it is fairly clear that if you are carrying out any shopping in a bag which is branded with the logo of the retailer, you're pretty much being used as a brand ambassador or a marketer as you walk in those malls with those shopping bags. So
I'm going to ask you to repeat that. So if there is a logo on the bag.
If there is a logo, whether it's a paper bag, whether it's plastic bags, in any case, have been discontinued. Right. But whether it's a jute bag, whether it's a paper bag, whether it is a cloth bag, as long as the bag carries a logo, the retailer has no right to charge for that bag.
Okay.
However, if the bag is free of any logo, free of any branding, then the bag is priced at an MRP, and then the retailer is free to assign any MRP to that bag. So, I mean, simple examples of weekend shopping. You go to a Marks and Spencer, you go to an H&M, you go to a Hamleys, you buy something from those stores. They present a bag automatically to you without you paying for that bag, because those bags are branded with their logos.
Right.
I'm not sure in this particular instance whether IKEA bag was branded or not.
It was
If
branded.
it was branded, obviously the consumer courts would rule in favor of the customer and penalize, but on the contrary, if you look at, let's say, a brand like Decathlon, in Decathlon, you do your shopping, you have a huge paper bag, and that paper bag is unbranded, and you pay whatever 10 rupees, 20 rupees as it is priced, and you put your shopping in that and you walk out, and that is part of your bill in any case.
Absolutely. Very interesting there, I think, for a lot of you and on me as well, for those of us who did not know. If you are walking out of a retail store in upcoming days, and if your bag, the bag that you're carrying that has been given by that retail store to you, is branded, you should not have to pay for it. That is exactly what consumer courts all across the country have ruled for. But in case it is not branded, you will have to pay as asked by the retail store. But that is an interesting story that we continue to track here. But we've run out of time, Karthik, on this show. For all those who've tuned in, thank you very much for watching.